And now we come to our first conversation here on the 10X stage. And with the first conversation, we will explore now from sandbox to global scale, unlocking the next generation of unicorns. And as we've seen, unicorns are now being created faster than ever. So we'll be diving now into what does it take when it comes to early stage testing. What do we need to know about the growth inflection points? We're going to look at government-backed programs that de-risk early bets. We're going to look at the role of public-private partnerships from scaling from sandbox and to, of course, sovereign relevance. And, of course, transformation. Transformation that happens early stage when it comes to innovation. And we look into the global market impact. And this fireside chat will be packed with real-world case studies, data-backed insights, and the strategies behind the real unicorns. And I'm really looking forward to see the moderator once again on stage. He's always a bliss to work with. He's always really looking into what does it mean. And therefore, I'm sure you heard all his name, Mike Butcher. He's the founding editor-at-large of TechCrunch UK, a name synonymous with European tech journalism. He was awarded with an MBE for his services to tech and journalism, and his work has really informed policymakers. He has advised prime ministers and inspired founders across the globe. And with him, we've got two visionary leaders. We've got Federico Menna, the CEO of 28 Digital from Belgium, and Anuar Fadzil, the CEO of MDEC Malaysia. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my guests. Come on stage, guys. Great. Everyone having a good time at GITEX and Expand North Star? Yeah, great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, everyone. We're going to sit in order. Now you can actually see who we are. It's fantastic to see you all. One of the issues that surrounds startups is that early stage when they need support at the earliest stages. They need the kinds of support networks that are going to help them in those early stages. And one of the key aspects of that is governmental help and help at the early stage of the ecosystem. One of the interesting things about what EIT Digital did in Belgium was did that very thing. But ladies and gentlemen, we have some breaking news because EIT Digital under Federico Menna has been rebranded now as 28 Digital. So it's a very exciting time. So Federico, I'd love to hear from you first. What did EIT Digital do? And then what do you plan to do now with 28 Digital that's going to be similar and different? Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mike, for the warm welcome. Very happy to be here. As Mike said, this is my first public appearance under our new name. We just rebranded on Thursday of this week, or last week, to 28 Digital. What is 28 Digital? We are the largest European ecosystem on dealing with innovation and education on digital technologies. This means that we bring together more than 300 actors from corporates, startups and SMEs, universities and research and technology organizations. And with this group of like-minded organizations, we build programs that on the one hand are creating a new generation of digital leaders that are able to know technology but also how to implement technology in society and in economy in order to generate value. But also we help entrepreneurs creating and growing their company to become a European global champion. What's the difference from today? Our ambition, and that's also the reason why we are called 28 Digital, is that we become a layer that works on top of the 27 member states, creating a unified market for entrepreneurs, but also students and talent circulation. So from now on top of doing all the things I mentioned before, we will also be attracting more and more talents and startups to Europe because we believe that Europe can be a place not only to provide technology and talents to the rest of the world, but a place where talents and startups can thrive, scale, and grow.
Amazing. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to watching your progress over the next few weeks, months, and years. And we're also joined by Anuar, Fariz, Fadzil, who's the CEO of MDEC Malaysia. And I think to kick off the discussion, what's so interesting is how public states and governments can get involved in nurturing startups. What's going on with MDEC, and how are you working at the early stage at that support network, and how do you help to scale startups as well?
Thank you, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and a very good afternoon to everyone. It's a delight and pleasure to be here. So Mike asked, how do we at MDEC help and support? For me, it really is about how at MDEC we are working at enabling a common sort of environment for everyone to do well, because we work on laying the groundwork on this. How are we enabling the private sector to do better? The public sector will be able to help with matching grants. Public sector will be helping with regulatory sort of environment and how we do it. It is for me, it is a shared ownership and shared success. So we've had some very good success stories. For example, we have Grab in Malaysia, who moved on to Singapore and did really, really well. We have a few fintechs that's done really, really well. But we want to be able to have a more structured and a more refined sort of environment to have more and more companies do really, really well. In Malaysia, there's this saying where we say, do it first and say sorry later. So that's a very wild, wild west sort of thinking. Just get things done. How do we do it? But in vis-a-vis in Europe, for example, it's very structured, very refined. How are we able to structure certain sort of policy decisions? And for MDEC, it's about bringing out the best, bringing out the ability to really distill the product that you have, and how can that be a global sort of success for everyone. In Malaysia, the users, the company, and the government.
I see. And I mean, what are some of the mistakes that you think governments can make at that early stage? You mentioned, do it first and ask for permission later. But do you really believe that that's true? Do you think that a lot of the time it's not the case that they do that?
Governments by nature are very risk averse.
Yeah.
So we let the private sector take on the risk. And that way, we learn from the mistakes. Because if you're too risk averse, you risk slowing things down. You risk not being able to be on the cutting edge. You risk not capitalizing on certain things. So for us, is where do we strike that balance? In Europe, for example, my personal opinion is over-regulated. You cannot put one toe out of line before Brussels says, no, that's not going to work. In Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, there's an experiment on how things are moving and how things are going to work. So for me, that is that symbiosis. Working together, making the mistakes fast, failing fast, and learning in a faster structured way.
Federico, what would you say some of the mistakes that can be made when the public sector tries to interact with the very fast-moving nature of private sector companies, startups?
Yeah, in my view, the biggest mistake that we see, and maybe also in Europe, is the fact that the governments are not willing to take risks in a way. So they always say, to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to take risk. If you want to be an investor that makes a lot of money out of a return of an investment, you need to bet on the high risk, high reward. But why the government is not doing so? So the government should play the same game and help these companies grow. And sometimes they will fail, but in other cases they will win. And it will not be only the government winning, but the whole ecosystem. And that's where Europe, I see, finally stepping up with initiatives like the one I'm representing, but also the EIC. But it took a while. So, but that's, I would say, the key that I would see in Europe to improve. And I like a lot what Anuar said about, in Asia, when they take a decision, then they make it happen. In Europe, maybe, I don't think we are over-regulated, but sometimes we take too much of a not direct line towards the implementation of the decision, and that's something we really have to step up.
And on the flip side, what's some of the best ways that you think you've worked with early stage companies? You mentioned earlier, just now, some of the companies you've seen have scaled. What was behind the success stories, do you think, of those companies and the way that you worked with them?
For me, I think it's the experimentation in how they did things, right? So I'll take Grab as an example. Grab started out as an e-hailing sort of solution for Malaysia, where they work with taxis. It has since evolved to everything that you can think of. Food deliveries. It's a lot like Uber, by the way, so it's a lot of food deliveries, but it goes further now. It's a fintech company, it takes in save, it's a bank, it's a digital bank. And these sort of solutions would not be possible if they didn't venture out further, if they didn't dare to take the risk to say, let's give this a go. In Indonesia, there is this thing called Gojek, where it's everything that Uber is, plus, 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 plus. You can order a manicure on Gojek. You can order a motorcycle delivery. The motorcycle can be your taxi. And I don't think that there's something that is developed in-house through just armchair research. It's about understanding market demands. It's about understanding what the solution is. That's why I don't think they can work in Europe, for example, because the demand isn't there. But in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in other countries, there is a need because of traffic jam. There's a need because we want to have some solutions to the problems we have, and these solutions are fit for purpose. And how we push that agenda through the government agencies is to say, okay, there's a risk to this, but maybe you can offload some of the risks by we can give you a matching grant. We can be an early stage of investor to mitigate some of the risks and learn faster, and everyone learns together.
Yeah. And what success stories have you seen come out of programs that you've run, and how are you going to, continue that flywheel effect under 28 Digital?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have 7 of them with us at Expand North Star, and 3 of them are in the semi-finalist of the Supernova program. So I do believe they can be very good examples of success stories. What's the recipe that we adopt? In a way, it's what I said before, that we play this additional layer on top of the fragmentation, and we try to transform the very diverse and fragmented market that we have in Europe into an asset, because we connect all these startups with the corporates that can be in different countries with different needs and business pains, but also with excellent talents from all kinds of corners of Europe, specialized on very specific topics that maybe in a smaller market you wouldn't find. So the network and the ecosystem is really the key differentiator that we have in Europe, especially if we make that additional step to transform the fragmentation into a real collaboration between different ecosystems.
And finally, well, not finally, but next up, I think one question I think is on everyone's lips, of course, these days, is artificial intelligence. And to generate AI solutions, you need access to infrastructure. And a lot of companies now, they need access to huge amounts of data centers and compute. How do you see that playing out in the way that the public sector can certainly help with access to those kinds of public sector capabilities, whether it be credits or other kinds of programs that you can help leverage and bring your muscle, as it were, to those smaller companies? What would you say, Anuar?
So for Malaysia, there's a real data center boom right now in the state of Johor, which is next to Singapore. And this happened because of many things. One is, I think Singapore had this policy where there's no more new data centers, so we moved across. 2, I think with the stable policies that Malaysia offers, and the understanding that data is literally the new sort of oil and wealth that's coming out. So, but we cannot have just data centers and be a low-end data center. It cannot be just somewhere where we just store data. That doesn't make sense. So we're working on Gen AI. We're working on AI data centers. We're working on having policies for sustainability. Such a new frontier, right? We're learning about what data protection means, what data sharing means. So in Malaysia, we passed the Data Protection Act, we passed the Data Sharing Act, and these sort of guardrails, so to speak, are the ones that would manage the future for data centers. The one would manage the future for what data ultimately means. Because there are 2 things that AI would really want. 1, data to make informed decisions. 2, power to be able to feed the machine. And from there, learning about what the public sector can give. Lower tariffs for data centers, Data Sharing Act, data protection to make sure our data is safe and secure, sovereignty. I don't want data to be stolen and be used somewhere else, right? So these are the environment that we are placing. But we encourage the private sector to be able to do well as well, to propose certain things. Because the speed of how the private sector works is way faster. We cannot match that. And there's this law where, Moore's law, where compute power doubles every 2 years. With AI, that goes out the window. Every week there's something new that comes out. Every week there's a new innovation. Every week there's things that needs data, needs power, needs compute. We can't keep up in the government.
Right.
Private sector can, however.
I see. Well, what would you say, Federico?
Well, in Europe, we started a great initiative, which is the AI factories. Just on Thursday this week, 7 new AI factories were launched. So this helps a lot in creating the infrastructure, which we were missing before. But now what we are doing, and especially we as 28 Digital, we are running a program which is co-financed by the European Union and by the member states, not only to have this capacity, but to have someone using this capacity. And it's important, and this is what we are also advocating for Europe, is that this capacity is also reserved for research, but that there is an equal amount reserved for business. And we are now helping the Commission and the Member States to identify prominent entrepreneurs and startups at the early stage that can make use of this capacity to build new business solutions and hopefully become the next global players. But it's really important that we not only focus on the capacity itself, but we really focus on the application layer to make use of this capacity. Because if we use it only to do research, then for Europe it will be like staying at the same level as before. Great research, somebody else will make products out of it.
Right. You mentioned Gab earlier, and there are other verticals that lots of regions play in, that are strong in. London is very strong in fintech, for instance. What verticals do you see in your ecosystems that are booming at the moment, that are particularly interesting in the way that you work with your organization and with startups? Which vertical sectors? It could be fintech, it could be mobility, robotics, AI. What's going on?
I think Malaysia and Southeast Asia, the way we scale and boom is by necessity. So it's how we address certain issues. That would mean that we want to solve money issues, so fintech, there's a boom. We want to solve productivity, so how does AI address the whole feature? Transport is always a problem, so it's always transport on demand. These are the main things that we're really looking in. But because we're central towards the Asia and we're in the middle of the West and the East, a lot of things bleed through. So yes, I agree. London is a fintech sort of utopia, but there's a lot of interesting sort of bits coming out from East Asia. A lot of interesting bits coming out from Malaysia. There's a fintech in Malaysia. It's called Touch and Go Digital. Heavily invested by many of our government-linked companies. They do about on a daily basis transactions about $100 million US, and monthly transactions. Let me convert that. It's about $2 billion US a month. So a lot of new innovative solutions are coming out, but because it is scaled by necessity to solve a problem, there is no one particular sector. It's multi-sectoral, and everything from cybersecurity to fintech to transport. These are problems that's being solved every day. And at MDEC, we're trying to get that solution to be done. We have a lot of programs that we manage under our boom to address a global solutions as well. Problems that originates in Southeast Asia are addressed globally.
Yeah. And what verticals do you see are happening right now that they're particularly interesting, Federico?
Yeah, I would like to mention 3 when it comes to Europe. So the first one is obviously cybersecurity, everything related to trust. Especially in the current geopolitical context, we feel that Europe can really represent a trusted continent where solutions built in Europe or made in Europe can be a global standard. The second one is robotics, which is also something where we see a growth also to make the industry more efficient. And the third one is agri-tech. Agri-tech, especially after the pandemic and then the crisis between the war between Ukraine and Russia, showed that we need a more resilient and more efficient supply chain, especially in the food sector. And we see Europe really stepping up in that domain.
Yeah, robotics and hardware and defense is a big one now for obvious reasons.
Exactly.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately the timer is flashing 0 on us, but I'll be back on the 10X stage for Expand North Star over the week, and also be at GITEX on the main stage. But from me, Mike Butcher, and by the way, just a small announcement, I have now launched my own media company called pathfounders.com. So if you go to pathfounders.com, you'll see our launch article there. But ladies and gentlemen, please a big round of applause for Federico from Menna from 28 Digital, Anuar, Fariz, Fadzil from MDEC, and from me, Mike Butcher. I shall see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.